I'd like to go ahead and call the meeting to order tonight. This is the regular meeting of the Kalispell City Planning Commission. Today is February 13th, 2024. I'd like to welcome everyone, and with that, I'd like to have a roll call, please.
Rory Young,
Here.
Tim Stockland, Pip Burke, here. Kevin Orrick, Doug Kaufman,
Here?
Joshua Borgart,
Here.
Chad Graham.
Thank you, and note that a quorum is present. Move on to item B, which is approval of the minutes from the January 9, 2024 meeting.
I move to approve the minutes from January 9th, 2024.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded for approval of the meeting minutes as published. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Hearing none, the minutes are approved. Next, we'll move on to item C, which is hear the public. If you wish to opine tonight on any matter that's not on the agenda, typically we keep these at 3 minutes. If you want to speak, please step to the mic and state your name and address for the record. Anybody care to opine?
Anybody what?
Would you like to talk
I do.
on items on the agenda or just open?
I'm not on the agenda, no.
Okay, please step to the mic and state your name and your address, please.
My name is Donald Seaman, and I live at 33 East Nicholas. And my concern here, my interest and my concern is I own the lot that's residential lot, that's the first residential lot east of this proposed development. And as you know, that particular area over there is on septic systems. And I realize when you annex this will be on the city sewer and whatever, so septics are not a big concern.
Okay, excuse me, sir. That item is on the agenda tonight,
Yeah?
so typically we would take your public comment when that comes
Oh,
onto the
okay.
agenda. So if you want to just sit down and wait till that comes up on the agenda, why, that'd be great.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak to the public?
Is there anyone online?
Online.
Oh, anybody online? Thanks. Kind of forgot about that. Hearing none, we'll close that portion of the meeting, and we'll move into the public hearing for item number 1. It's the Depot Park Building Montana Historic Preservation Grant. Staff?
Yes, thank you, Planning Commission. You will not be taking action on this item tonight. You may recall every now and again, we use the Planning Commission forum as a place for a public hearing because we do public hearings every month regarding land use approvals. So in this particular case, it is that same scenario. So there's no action, but we will be holding a public hearing and taking public comment on the item I'm going to present to you at this time. I don't have a formal presentation, but I will read what I have here. You may recall the city is relocating the Parks Department into the Depot Park building. That is happening as we speak, and there's an interior remodel of that building happening as we speak. All along, we have looked at this grant as an opportunity to do some work on the outside of the building because it also has some maintenance that needs to happen, including a new roof and painting of the building. That is a historic building, so it would qualify for this historic preservation grant. So we're looking at going after funds in order to do that. So the city of Kalispell does intend to apply for a Montana Historic Preservation Grant in the amount of $286,338. I would like to correct the original amount of $500,000 in there. Since that time, the budget has been amended. So we would be looking at applying for $286,000 with a 20% match being required. of $71,584. So the total project cost would be $357,922. The project would involve installing a new roof, gutters, and exterior paint. The completion of the improvements will transform the landmark into a welcoming space for both community and visitors. That coincides with also the interior remodel that's happening. The public hearing is to solicit public comments for the project in accordance with the Montana Environmental Policy Act, and therefore this hearing has been scheduled. So all this public hearing documentation, the legal, and any public comments will go along with the grant as a requirement of Montana ARM 8.23045. It is expected that the project is categorically exempt from environmental review because it is just minor repair or maintenance of an existing facility. The grant program is state-funded, created in 2019 as a result of Senate Bill 338, and it's designed to support public or private entities with the preservation of historic sites, historic societies, or history museums throughout this grant funding. So just looking for public comment. Once again, we are looking at doing an exemption on this one, but just opening it up for public comments on this proposed project, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jared. Any questions from the commission?
There was one written comment received, right? I don't know if that has to be noted or not.
Yes, and that was provided in the comments. So we did get one comment about that, and that'll be included in the grant packet.
Any more questions?
No questions.
Okay, I'll go ahead and open the public hearing. So anyone wishing to talk about this item, please step forward to the mic and state your name and address for the record. Anyone wishing to speak? Anyone wishing for the public comment session? Seeing none, we'll close that. And move on to item number 2, which is file number KA-24-01, request from TTC Investments LLC, Scoreboard Pub Bar LLC, and Mitch Tormal for annexation and initial zoning of the B1 neighborhood business at the property located at 520 Linwood Lane. Do we have the staff report, please?
Sure. As you mentioned, TTC Investments LLC, Scoreboard Bar, Sports Bar LLC, and Mitch Termolin have applied for annexation initial zoning of B1, which is neighborhood business, for property located at 520 Linwood Lane. And it's along the east property lines of 51, 52, 51, 55, and 75 Woodland Park Drive. The property totals approximately 17,400 square feet. It consists of an alley right-of-way that was recently abandoned by the county commissioners right on the western edge of the subject property, and a lot used as parking for the Scoreboard Bar, which is right there. While no plans have been submitted, it is anticipated that the property would be developed as an apartment complex. This application and review are limited to only the annexation and initial zoning designation for the property. There's not a review of the redevelopment of the property, and any review of the redevelopment of the site would occur when plans are submitted. Also, as a side note, the property being annexed will be aggregated with the main Scoreboard property. And again, right here is the Scoreboard with the parking area. This area is the gravel parking lot, with the existing city limits line running right through there. In terms of general location, it's right across from Woodland Park. You can see the water park just off to the northwest, gas station, auto repair, offices running through this area, and an apartment that's under construction up to the north. As far as utilities, there's city water and sewer that are in the adjacent right-of-way. Just a shot of the property from the Woodland Park side. Existing zoning is County R5. The existing Scoreboard property, again, is in the city and is Zone B1, that neighborhood business designation. Again, as I mentioned, the subject property would be aggregated with property to its west, which is already within the city limits. That property is zone B1 with a growth policy designation of commercial on the Kalispell Growth Policy Future Land Use Map, which supports the B1 zoning. The map designates the subject property as urban residential, and the zoning ordinance generally does not contemplate B1 as a zone within that land use designation. Under section 27.20.070 of the zoning ordinance, lots should not be split into 2 or more zones if possible. It is important to note that the growth policy is not in itself a regulation. Rather, it is a policy document that guides regulation. As such, the map designation should not be viewed as fixed lines on a map, and the appropriate zoning district for the property as a whole should be based on growth policy map designations as well as the nature of the existing use on the property, which is parking for a bar, and the existing county zoning that is in place. Under both city and county zoning, B1 zoning matches the existing condition more closely than a residential district. Additionally, the B1 is intended to serve as a buffer zone between higher density uses and residential areas. It accomplishes that goal in this situation. Taking into account the growth policy map, existing county zoning, and the existing use, the requested zone of B1 would comply with the growth policy, and applying that district to the entire property would be consistent with the zoning ordinance. We did receive several calls and drop-ins asking about the annexation and development plans, and I believe a number of people are here to discuss that tonight too. With that, staff would recommend that the Kalispell City Planning Commission adopt staff report KA 2401 as findings of fact, and recommend to the Kalispell City Council that the property be annexed with an initial zoning designation of B1 neighborhood business, and be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, PJ. Any questions from the commission? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing phase of this hearing. So if you care to speak about this item, please step to the microphone, state your name and address for the record, and let us know what you're thinking.
My name is Cheryl Cush. I live at 546 Lenwood Lane, which is east of this. Are there going to be notifications before someone tries to put an apartment complex in there? We have so much traffic from the scoreboard on Lenwood Lane, anywhere from 30 to 50 miles an hour people drive through there. And then you want to throw more people in there by putting an apartment complex in there? That's going to put even more people on our street that drive crazy, burn-offs, all the stuff that goes on with the bar. And then you want to take that out and put in an apartment complex to add more traffic in our area? It's terrible now. I think the bar lives in my backyard. Thank you.
Thank you. Just so everyone's aware, this is strictly a hearing for the initial zoning and annexation. There's no project, quote unquote, on the table here. So if you could keep your comments directly to the annexation and initial zoning, I'd be deeply appreciative. Any other comments, please?
I guess my question is then, when this gets annexed and the next phase goes in, when they plan on putting this, whatever, expanding the bar or putting in apartment buildings or whatever, then there will be another meeting that we can comment on how it will affect anything that's near there, like what she just said, noise and traffic and all of the above. Is that where we'll be?
With the new stipulations, I guess I'd need some input from staff on that. Would this come back before the
Did you want
commission?
us to address that now or after public comment?
Yeah, maybe after the public comment would be more appropriate. Thank you. We'll try to answer that question after the public comment.
Because I have some issues that pertain to what goes in there and how it will affect my properties right next to it. But I don't know if this is the appropriate time to bring that up or what.
if you're speaking to the zoning and the annexation, then that would be appropriate. If you're talking about what might go in there, probably not appropriate this time because there is no project, quote unquote, proposed at this time.
Well, because I've owned that piece of property since 1975, and I understand the history of the area, and I understand how that got to be supposedly a parking lot, which it is not a parking lot. I went to the county when that was proposed, that they were filling that in, and it looked like there was an annex or moved the parking over into that area. And the reason that that lot was vacant is because the scoreboard, before that, that was a church. They put a bar in there, and they kept expanding it. And as they cleared their lot off of snow, whatever they did, they pushed it all over next to that residential lot, eventually completely ruining that septic system and drain field. And then the house became worthless. The guy was older, he moved out. And then I think Lincoln or whoever owned the bar purchased that lot, and then they started filling it in and said they were going to make a parking lot out of that. Well, things have to happen before you just fill in and extend your parking for a business. So I went to the county planning board and I asked what they were doing. They said, well, they didn't know anything about it. I said, well, it looks like it's going to be a parking lot. And they said, well, you keep an eye on it, and if there's something happened there, you come take a picture and bring it to me. Well, as that turned out, they finished filling, they brought trucks in and filled it in, bladed it out, and it's just sitting there. But as far as I'm concerned, it's not considered a parking lot. It's just something they took over, which I don't think they even should have. But anyway, if they expand it, and the city has the rights to annex and move anything or annex anything within a certain distance of their city, they will. I'm just concerned about that not happening to my place that's right next door because I have a septic system. And that's, and if when they start to build something or do whatever, then I can find out, how that will affect my area for parking. If there's apartment house and there's 40 units in there and there's 40 cars show up, there's going to be a big parking area. There's going to be a lot of things there. So if that'll impact me at that time, then I'll come back and state my case then. But that's kind of where I'm involved. So I realize things move on, and I'll deal with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Thanks, Don.
Seaman.
I have one
Any-
other question. Our water company that services our 50-some houses right there in in Phillips Addition, sits right on the edge of that, the scoreboard lot. What's gonna happen to that? Nobody knows? And how do we know who owns that piece of property? Did it go up for sale? How did that happen? That it's just all of a sudden the mobile home that was there is gone?
Okay, typically, you have one chance to talk. Second of all, we don't answer the questions. We're here to take your comments, which we'll then discuss later on amongst the commission members. Okay, any additional comments?
Since you put it that way, I'm Dean Cush. That's my wife. Same property. We need to know,
Your name, sir?
Dean Cush.
Thank you.
We need to know how this is working with the alleyway that goes in the back, because there's snow pushed up on it now. Nobody can get in there. And I've seen that whole place filled full of cars. I just don't know what would happen if something else was put in there.
Thank you, Mr. Cush.
And I agree with this gentleman heavily.
Thank you. Additional public comment? Any additional public comment? We have anyone online?
No.
Kathy Bradley, the Phillips Edition, 538 Lenwood Lane. How many units do they plan on putting in, or is that the discussion that will come later? And how high are they building them? And just what is a plan?
As previously stated, ma'am, this is dealing with the annexation.
Right, got that.
We can't answer any questions about any projects because we haven't even seen a project.
Okay, but that will be my concern and will we hear about that to make comment then?
We'll address that after the public comment has been taken.
Okay.
Any further public comment on this item? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing portion. To entertain a motion from the board, or commission, actually. It's now called. Sorry, I got to catch up here.
I would move that the Kalispell City Planning Commission adopt staff report KA-24-01 as findings of fact and recommend to the Kalispell City Council that the property be annexed and the zoning for the property be City B1 neighborhood business.
Second.
It's been-
Doctor, we could not understand what he was saying.
Can you not hear him or you can't understand it?
Can't hear him, we
Oh.
can't understand him.
Is your mic on?
Yeah, mic's on. Would you care to repeat, please?
I would move that the Kalispell City Planning Commission adopt staff report KA-24-01 as findings of fact and recommend to the Kalispell City Council that the property be annexed and the zoning for the property be City B1 neighborhood business.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. We'll now open it up for board discussion. Any discussion by the board?
I guess the only offer I can give is that in a B1 zone, if someone wants to develop an apartment, it requires a conditional use permit, correct?
Right. Did you want me to run down some of
Yeah.
the issues that came up there?
I'm sorry, I should have addressed that to you directly when we closed that public comment.
So, first of all, as far as further public hearings that might happen on that, and again, we don't know what the specific development is going to be, and that's not what we're looking at today. But if something did come in, it would depend upon the use as to whether or not there would be an additional public hearing on that. So apartments under state law now do not require, they have to be allowed as a permitted use. So there would not be a follow-up meeting on the apartment as far as a public hearing that would be on that. And that's recent state law that took effect in January. Prior to that, there would have been a conditional use permit, but that's not state law anymore. That Senate bill is part of a lawsuit that's down in Bozeman, so that's subject to change. But the current status of state law is that there would be no public hearing on that. If they were to do something else on the property, if they were going to be expanding the bar, relocating the bar, something like that, that would take a public hearing on that because that's a conditionally permitted use. So again, it depends upon what happens. It's really speculative as to what might be happening on there. And again, we're just limited to just the annexation and zoning question that's going on with that. That being said, whether or not it was a public hearing or just coming through for a building permit, our standard building permit review process goes through, building fire code review, goes through architectural review, and we've got a site review committee. The site review committee has got different departments in the city, fire departments on that, police departments on that, public works. Our public works department looks at drainage, so there's drainage standards, and so if they're going to redevelop this property, they would need to account for drainage, and you can't have greater off-flows post-development than pre-development, or at least it's got to maintain that same rate that's going through there. Depending upon the intensity, there could be a traffic impact study that might be required as part of what they're doing. That would depend upon the number of units and, again, the type of use that's going on, but Public Works Department would look at that. So just because there's not a public hearing in this type of a setting doesn't mean that there's not a level of review that happens with the city, and some of the issues that are brought up would be addressed as part of that. But if it does come in, as far as the height and setbacks, that would just be according to our regular zoning ordinance. So whatever's allowed there, there's a minimum number of parking spaces that have to be paved under city standards. They would just have, whatever that development is, would have to be under our general city standards. And last thing I kind of heard was as far as ownership. I believe that's all owned by TTC Investments. With that, let me get this over here. With this main lot, when they do an abandonment, and it was done by the county commissioners because it was a county alley, same as in the city, where half of it goes to the one side, half of it goes to the other, which is why you see some of the Scoreboard Sports Bar LLC for most of that, which the Tormolen property was just a little segment up there. But again, all that would be aggregated into a single parcel as part of what their plan is. So I think that covered things.
Yeah, and the private, that is a private water system. We wouldn't be doing anything with that. Any proposed development on that site would be on city water and city sewer, so it wouldn't affect that system whatsoever. Any setbacks that may be required, if there's a well and such, would still have to be complied with. So any development on there would not even be using that system. It would be hooking onto the city water, which is within the right-of-way there. I would add I know traffic concerns were brought up. Any development will, depending on how large it is or isn't, if it generates 300 traffic trips, a traffic impact study is required, and a traffic impact study, they would analyze the traffic conditions in the area, plus any increased traffic that would come from the proposed development, and that development would have to mitigate any level of service drops in that area. For example, if there was a number of units, if a development created at least 300 traffic trips and, the level of service dropped there at Conrad and Woodland, they would have to mitigate that, whether it's a traffic signal, traffic stop, whatever it may be, or potentially nothing. But we would be analyzing that as part of the development, and that's our general standards that happen in the city. Once again, we are just looking at the annexation and initial zoning, but I think it's important for the public to realize that we're looking at a B1 zone, which is our lowest intensity commercial zone, which is designed and intended to be a zone that's on a major arterial like this, such as Woodland, but is also a transition to a neighborhood area. So it's less intensive commercial uses. You're not going to have outside storage and uses like that. And also our development standards do have just general commercial to residential buffers built in, just so, there's buffers that would have to happen between the two uses, and those are just built into our standards, whether there was a CUP required or not. So just trying to give an idea of, why we feel like it's the appropriate in this situation, because when you looked at the growth policy, the original growth policy map was essentially just following the alleyway, which since then has been abandoned. And then, like PJ had mentioned, the historical use of the site, knowing that whether the alley was there or not, the B1 would have been buffering that residential lot one way or another. So it'd be moving, but our standards take care of that. So happy to answer any other questions.
Any other questions? Any other questions? Hopefully that addresses the expressed concerns. Okay. We're all good? Okay.
The only thing I would add is that if there are additional questions from people here, they're welcome to stay after or come down and talk to the city. We can't answer your questions. Either the developer or city staff may be able to help you with that.
Seeing no further questions, I'd like to take a roll call vote, please.
Joshua Borgart,
Yes.
Doug Kaufman,
Yes.
Pip Burke,
Aye.
Rory Young.
Aye.
Motion passes. We'll now move on to item 3, which has to do with the Montana Land Planning Act, and I'll pass that over to staff to hopefully tell us what it's all about.
I'd just like to add real quick that was, the Planning Commission just makes a recommendation to the City Council, and the City Council will be considering this on March 4th. So you could provide comment to the City Council as well on that time. Same meeting, or same room at 7 o'clock on March 4th.
This will be the same thing, that the mind's made up already, we just walk in and go through nothing. I mean, he gave us the piece of paper a week ago.
Can we please keep down the chatter? Thank you. Okay, can we go ahead and address the staff report for the next item?
Okay, so what we got in front of you now is the public participation plan. It's something we've done work session on a couple times over the last few months with the commission. It's part of Senate Bill 382, which is the new Montana Land Use Planning Act. Just to summarize, 382, it kind of shifts some of the processes out there for land use planning. You've got the land use plan that would then provide the guidance for site-specific development. You wouldn't have site-specific public hearings as part of that. And you would have administrative approvals of primarily subdivisions, but also CUPs that would be coming through. And the concept here is that you're shifting that public comment from the time that the development would be happening to the first part of the process, which is putting together that land use plan, which is why the public participation plan is really vital, because you're trying to get that public input up front rather than coming in later. And so, again, Senate Bill 382 kind of lays this out. You've got the Montana Land Use Planning Act requirements. Basically, the plan needs to provide for the dissemination of draft documents, opportunities for written and verbal comments, public meetings after effective notice, and electronic communication, as well as an analysis of and response to those public comments. What the state statute does and what the public participation plan does in multiple spots is really stresses that the opportunity to be engaged in this process is with the land use plan. It's not with site-specific development, because you wouldn't be having that notice going out. Kind of similar to what we talked about with the recent project here, is that those opportunities are going to be coming earlier in the process rather than later. And people need to be aware of that. And if they want to be able to contribute, then putting together that land use plan is that opportunity to do that. I'm just kind of scrolling through what we've got in here. This is going to be a public participation plan, not just for the land use plan and future land use map, but also for zoning and subdivision regulations that would be based on that land use plan. What you should expect from us is allowing and encouraging access to draft planning documents, opportunity for written and verbal comments, chance to be heard at public hearings and meetings, opportunities through electronic communication, whether it's the web or whatever, and an analysis of those public comments. Public participation principles as part of the plan would be guided by thought and purpose, respect and inclusion, transparency and trust, and an open, adaptable, and evolving plan throughout the whole process. And this comes up a couple points in the plan. Is it should be a continuing evaluation of the best way to get those comments, or get the information out and to get the comments back in from the public. As far as goals and objectives, one of the goals would be to create consistency, and that's both in terms of communication expectations and customer communication, and then also engaging the public throughout the process. Some of the tools, and this isn't necessarily a complete list, but information tools would include legal notice in the paper or by other means, notification when adjacent properties are required. Some situations, even reaching out to individual impacted properties, utilizing our website, social media, and news outlets, whether it's TV, radio, or print. Engagement tools would include meetings with community groups, meetings with city boards, utilizing surveys, comment forms, certainly planning commission work sessions, and I'm sure that we'll have a number of those with you. charrettes, pop-up studios, open houses, and presence at public events. For example, with that, we've always had a booth at the fair, and imagine we would continue with that. Again, there's continuous information and involvement throughout the entire process. It doesn't necessarily have to be as part of one of those specific information tools or outreaches. So we've included our contact information in here where people are welcome to come in and talk to us at any time about that. And again, at the end is just emphasizing, and again, because the statute specifically calls this out, that subsequent site-specific development would not have opportunity for public comment, that it should be provided at the earlier stage when we're putting together the land use plan, and then that land use plan would then guide the staff decisions at later with the later projects. So with that, if there's any questions you'd have, I'd be happy to answer those.
Thanks, PJ. Questions from the commission?
I have one. I think we talked about this in November, and it just occurred to me that it's not in here, some kind of a timeline. And when you have those long MDT things, they normally have first 6 months is public input, and second 6 months is whatever. I don't know if that's something
Yeah,
that needs
we
to
chose
be-
not to put it in here because we're trying to utilize it as not just for a one project type of a thing. There's definitely a time frame that we're going to have to meet because the statute includes a 3-year time frame. But we didn't have any specifics in here and get down to that details. We wanted to maintain, part of it too was just maintaining flexibility as we were moving forward and not necessarily be locked into a specific time frame if things move faster or slower than what we were originally laying out. So that's why we left out specific dates.
And I don't think they need to be 7th of June, we're going to stop doing this, but they can be fuzzy and overlap. But just showing that the reason why we're starting now is because we have a date of May next year. And then working back into what has to happen from that, right? And we've got May.
It's May of 26, but yeah.
May of 26, but then we've got whatever, a month for city council or whatever their timeline. I would find it helpful to know why we're doing it now when it's only needed in May 2026. And I think it'll be something just to consider. Schedule, scope, and budget.
Not like a project manager.
Watch the creep. Additional comments from the commission?
We would be looking for a motion to
Right.
forward a recommendation on to city council on that.
Hearing no more questions from the board, we'll go ahead and open the public comment. Anybody from the public care to talk about this item on the agenda? If so, please step forward to the microphone and give your name and address. Once again, any public comment? Anyone online? Nope. Seeing none, we'll close that portion. I'd entertain a motion.
I guess I recommend that the Kalispell Commission, what are we recommending, that this moves to the city council? Is that what we're moving?
Going
or-
to city council, yeah.
Oh, sorry. I recommend that the planning commission forward a recommendation to the city council to approve the public participation plan. Thank you.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Take a roll call vote.
No discussion?
Oh, yes, we can have discussion if you'd like.
I don't want.
I didn't really see
Just
the
us.
need, but thanks for pointing
Keep
that out.
going.
Any discussion then?
I guess the only discussion what Jared is pointing out is does any,
You think like a Gantt chart, just like a very rough, like kind of stages, whether it's 3 or 4 or 5 stages till adoption?
yeah, and I'm not, I guess I'm not moving that it should be included in it, I'm just suggesting it, I don't know.
It's always helpful to have,
Yeah.
just for different people, some people really like that kind of thing, summarization, I guess.
And I guess what I would be comfortable with, if we don't want to include it in the plan, it could be something that is displayed with the plan, just so that then it gives you guys some flexibility is.
Graphical
I think
gradient.
our, and we'll get into this, but our intent will be, as the messaging to come up with kind of like a a kickoff. Hey, we're starting this. Here's what the process looks like over the next year and a half. Here's how you can be involved. And I actually did just apply to the state for a grant.
Yeah, I was gonna
Montana-
say, are you gonna have a media kit or something, you know, just?
Well,
because
that was what I asked for the money for in the grant. You know, it was House Bill 819, very limited funds. Unfortunately, they out $1 million and they allocated it to 30 grants. So essentially it's $30,000, so I chose, knowing that 30,000 is not going to get you much, that I was going to look at using that to reach out to a PR firm to help us in this messaging component. You know, we've got a PR firm on our Safe Streets for All grant, and it's amazing what they can do, setting up a website and a story map and all these things in the messaging and the radio and open houses. So the intent would be, that's how we would start to get the messaging out. And I'm hoping to be able to get that grant awarded and start to utilize the funds for that particular purpose. So.
Good?
I am disgusted.
Perfect. Any other discussion? No. Well, we'll go ahead and call for a roll call vote then, please.
Rory Young,
Aye.
Doug Kaufman,
Yes?
Joshua Borgart,
Yes.
Pip Burke.
I,
Brings that item to close. We'll now move on to old business.
Okay, so last month we didn't have any agenda items from the Planning Commission, and so there wasn't any action at City Council, so there's nothing in regard to that. Although what I would mention is that we were represented in Helena. There was a legislative committee hearing with the local government committee, Kalispell, along with several other cities, Bozeman and Helena and Great Falls. Met with the committee there and kind of discussed the status of 382, where all that is at. They were asking for challenges that cities may be facing with that. And we certainly discussed cost and just the aggressive time frame that's in there. So they seem maybe receptive to maybe extending that time frame out a little bit to help out, cities get under compliance in an appropriate amount of time. And also kind of recognizing that, it's a costly thing to do, especially in today's climate with where some of these bids were coming back. Helena was, I think they were budgeting like 100,000. They got 4 bids that were like 250 to 750. And so that was an eye opener for a lot of people with that. And that was probably a low estimate to really do the whole thing. I mean, I think our estimate was quite a bit higher. Closer to 2 million when you're looking at the facilities plans. So helping spread those costs out and everything, I think there's a good chance we might see something out of that. But they're working on putting together some potential updates, and we'll be talking about that later on this year internally to their committee, and then we'll see what comes out of that at the next session.
Board, any old business?
Nope.
Seeing none, we'll move on to new business.
So new business, there's things on the horizon, but nothing for next month. So we'll be canceling the meeting next month. We didn't have any work sessions on that. Before long, we probably would be doing some regular work sessions on the land use plan, but we're not quite there yet. So again, next month we'd cancel. Just to kind of expand on that a little bit, just to let you know where we're at in terms of the land use update. What we're doing, there's a lot of information that has to go into your land use plan, putting together existing statistics and information on population and different trends and so forth that are out there. So we've been working with the different departments, seeing what kind of information we have on hand, what we can glean off of census, what we have for facilities plans. Fire and police, for example, did a recent one that's kind of the basis of that emergency services levy that's going out there right now. But bringing all of that in, kind of seeing what information we have, what we might need to go out and develop, and reaching out to outside consultants for. And we're pretty much through that. We've met with everybody but the Parks Department on that yet. So anyway, that's where our progress is with that. Once we pull that together and start getting some templates, drafts, different information, then, we bring you guys in and start working through that with a series of work sessions.
And we did apply for the pro housing grant. We're one of the few cities in the state that did. I think it was just us and Whitefish and the state that applied to it. So we should be hearing on that any day. If we're awarded that, that'll help us a lot to get through this. But hopefully we get good news here soon, and that'll, like I said, that'll get us through this, so.
I had a meeting with Jared yesterday. I don't remember what it was, about on a project, and there were two things that came out of that may interest the board. One is the latest census population estimate for City of Kalispell.
Somewhere around 32,000.
Which is quite a change.
That's dramatic.
Quite a change. And then the other one was that the subdivision report is available online.
Yes, the 2023 subdivision annexation report is online. Our number of building permits was down, but because valuations are now so high, I was surprised to see we still, this year, the building department, it was about 130 million in revenue, which was a bit higher than I thought, because that's in line with some of the previous years. So, but there was also a lot of multifamily and a lot of really big projects that obviously, are a lot to put together. But yeah, continue to see multifamily coming on the market. Hopefully that starts to make an impact on housing costs in the valley. Certainly, I say the valley because I feel like there's enough going on in the city of Kalispell that there's the entire valley is benefiting from that. But yeah, here as we get in the next couple months, it'll be all about continuing to progress through putting the Gantt chart together and planning out 382 and starting all the work that'll be associated with that. So.
Does that subdivision report include likely C of Os in the next few months or not? Or is that?
It doesn't get into that detail, no. I mean, it talks about the number of building permits that have been issued and by type, but it wouldn't get down to the level of when they're about to get the certificate of occupancy, but we could provide that information if somebody were to ask.
Board, any new business from board? Well, I guess we'll adjourn. Thank you, everyone. Now, we also have a planning commission holding a work session